Divine Life of the Most Holy Virgin Mary. An abridgment of the mystical City of God. Notice on the works of the Venerable Mary of Jesus of Agreda. By the Abbe J. A. Boullan. Among the holy souls of past centuries, who have been loaded with signal favors and privileges by the Queen of Heaven, we must, without doubt, place in the first rank, Mary of Jesus, often styled, of Agreda, from the name of the place in Spain where she passed her life. The celebrated J. Says, in his monumental work, Mysticism, fears not to cite as an example, the life of Mary of Agreda, in a chapter entitled, The Culminating Point of Christian Mysticism. Indeed, there could be found no more perfect model of the highest mystic ways. Her life is a striking example, in which it is important to study attentively the progress of a soul, which, according to the words of the prophet, ascends by degrees to the height of perfection, abunt de virtute in virtutum, goes from virtue to virtue. A powerful motive makes it a duty for us to publish a rather lengthy notice on Mary of Agreda. We wish to call the attention of our readers to so important a work as the Mystical City, of which the Divine Life, which we publish, is a faithful abridgment. We hesitate not to acknowledge that there is in France much prejudice against the Venerable Mary of Agreda and her works. Men, swayed by the power of unfounded prejudice, have assailed this pure memoir, and forbidden the reading of her works. For more than 7 years we have pursued our researches on this subject, and have been successful in finding irrefutable documents regarding it. In one of the libraries of Paris we have discovered the acts of the process of the canonization of this servant of God. It is on the authority of these incontestable writings that we will proceed, thus we hope to close the debate upon this question. There are divine and supernatural gifts so marvelous, that, were it not for the authority of the Church and the holy doctors, we would be tempted to doubt them. But doubt can only be the effect of ignorance or bad faith, and neither the one nor the other can justify man at the tribunal of his conscience, any more than at that of God. The God of mercy grants to some souls those privileges known under the name of clear, distinct, and precise words, or supernatural expressions, that is, he deigns to speak to them either directly and immediately from himself, or by the ministry of angels, as is more generally the case. Sometimes it is God the Father, at others our Lord, or the august Mother of God, or, as more rarely happens, some of the saints, who consent to speak to souls raised to a particular degree of contemplation. Saint Teresa, whose authority on these matters is indisputable, because of the approbation with which the Church has stamped her writings, treats of this question in the Castle of the Soul 6th dwelling, chapter 3. God, says she, makes the soul feel his presence by various means. He causes her to hear words in different ways, sometimes they seem to come from the exterior, sometimes from the interior. Some seem to proceed from the superior part of the soul, while others are so exterior, that we hear them with our ears. Alvarez de Paz adds, that they sometimes seem to come from the center of the heart, interdum ex ipso penetrali cordis Surgia, Volume 3, Book 5, Chapter 6. The Seraphic Saint explains the means for distinguishing the origin of these words, for theft may proceed from the imagination, from the devil, or from God. When God speaks to us, says she, he suddenly hushes all other thoughts that we may be attentive to what he says, and it is less in our power to be deaf to his voice, than for a person of very acute hearing not to hear what is uttered in a loud tone. When God speaks, it is impossible for the soul to close her ears, or think of anything but of what she hears. May my explanations, continues she, regarding the divine words, and the few admonitions which I have given, be useful to those souls whom the Divine Master may honor with these favors. Says, in whom we hear all the doctors, explains the manner in which this is operated. Examining the manner in which the angels communicate their thoughts to each other, he applies it to the souls to whom God grants this gift. Suarez, Part 2, Book 2, Chapter 27. Scaramilli, in his Directorio Mystico, treats of this sublime subject, ex professo, and, having for his basis the doctrine of the Great Fathers, develops this matter under every point of view. Tract 4, Chapter 14, 15. We must add, that all the servants of God who hear these supernatural and heavenly words, sometimes behold under corporeal forms, the heavenly personages who pronounce them, at other times, they hear without seeing. What we have said will suffice to draw the attention of clergymen, and induce them to study these marvels of grace. In view of the phenomena of magnetism and neo-spiritualism which now inundate the world, they will be able the more readily to distinguish truth from error. They will clearly discern the snares which the enemy, the angel of darkness, has laid for men, even from the beginning of the world, by leading them to reject all that is supernatural, or by plunging them in the gross deceits in which he involves the unfortunate adepts in his dark doctrines. Let us examine, first, whether anyone, no matter with what authority he may be vested, is allowed to forbid the reading of the works of Mary of Agreda. Secondly, whether it is true to say that the reading of them is permitted, and that we have nothing to fear from the doctrine taught in them. Regarding the first point, our task is very easy. 11 years after the appearance of this work, after it had been translated into Italian, discussions concerning it were immediately raised. The Tribunal of the Holy Office, on account of the state of the times, to quote the words of the postulator of the cause of the canonization of Mary of Agreda, passed a decree of prohibition on the 4th of August, 1681. But God, who knows how to draw good from evil, allowed this prohibition to serve for the greater triumph of these works. 3 months afterwards, on November 9, 1681, the decree was revoked. Happily, we can give our readers the authentic text of the decree which declares the suspension of the first. It is extracted from the process of canonization. Innocentius Papa 12. In negotiatio liberum sanctimonialis Mariae Jesus de Agreda superstendum duximus, quem vis sacra hugis inquisitionis ratio et stylus alitus aderant. Datum rens, sub annulo pescatoris, the 9th of November 1681. Innocent 12. With regard to the books of the Holy Nun, Mary of Jesus of Agreda, we have thought best to suspend our judgment, although the custom and manner of the Sacred Inquisition would suggest otherwise. Given in Rome, under the Ring of the Fisherman, this 9th day of November, 1681. The reader will, no doubt, ask what is the power of this last decree, and if it truly has the character of an obligatory law in the universal Church. In answer to this, we have only to refer to the general teachings of the doctors. The sovereign authority has decided the question. On this matter the slightest doubt, the least discussion, is no longer allowed. In 1713 the Holy Office published a decree, in which the Bishop of C is ordered to conform to the suspensive decree of Innocent XII, and not again to forbid to anyone the reading of the works of Mary of Agreda. We subjoin it as follows. Decree of the Holy Office. In the congregation held September 19, 1713, at which were present their eminences, Cardinals Acciaioli, Spada, Fabroni, and Ottoboni, it was resolved that the letter of the Inquisitor of C should be withdrawn, and that the suspensive decree has the power of law throughout the universal Church. The original is preserved in the convent of Aracoli in Rome. First, thus it is true to say that no one is allowed to forbid the reading of these works. Second, by permission of divine providence, the Holy See has done more than protect the works of Mary of Agreda against her adversaries. It was formally permitted the reading of them. Pope Alexander VIII, of happy memory, was prevented by death from giving a decree, but he expressly authorized the reading of them, Oracula Viva Rods. In fine, the Sacred Congregation of Rites, under Benedict XIII, passed a decree as follows. It is ordered that the cause of the said servant of God shall be continued without any re-examination of the mystical city, and her works may be kept and read. March 14, 1729. This decree is signed by Benedict XIII. The Tribunal of the Holy See having definitively judged the cause, the reader will no longer hesitate to edify himself by the doctrine of the works of this servant of God. We may pass over the clamor raised against this book by the partisans of Satan, as our cause has been judged. Having cited the authentic decrees of the Court of Rome, we come now to the eulogiums given to these works. About a year ago, was found in the Imperial Library a collection of the correspondence of Mary of Agreda with Philip IV of Spain. These letters have been published in one volume by M. Vatten. M. German de Levine, speaking of the mystical city, says, "We have read this wonderful book, this treatise ex professo of the celebrated ascetic, and can only say with the doctors who have edited it, that the mysteries of the Christian religion, principles of the Catholic Church, the most abstruse texts of Holy Scripture, confuse computations of evangelical history, the most hidden decrees of divine providence, of theology, sacred, dogmatic, expositive, scholastic, moral, deliberative, mystic, all are united in it." We will now repeat briefly the words of the most competent judges of these matters. Anthony, surnamed the very celebrated doctor, says, "This book has delighted me. Every word of it is clear and full of life. In a word, the reading of it raises the mind, inflames the heart, and excites to great devotion." Further, Andreas Mendo of the Society of Jesus, says, "The whole work is a continuous light which illumines the intellect, and a flame which kindles the will. It banishes tepidity, and incites to the practice of virtue. He who reads it carefully, cannot fail to be instructed, and feel an ardent desire of becoming a saint." Further, Didace de Silva, a Benedictine, says, "The reading of this book is very profitable, it has an admirable and efficacious power to persuade. All that can be said of it, falls far short of the truth. When we begin to read, we are filled with admiration. I feel with regret that it would require the wisdom of an angel to adequately express my wishes, my thoughts and my veneration with regard to it." Father John of the Mother of God, says, "I have been so happy as to receive this book, it fills me with admiration. All in it causes me to think that the author has been illumined with light from above. It will bring great consolation to the faithful." The most renowned and celebrated universities have extolled this admirable work. We will omit the testimonies of the universities of Madrid, Alcalá, Salamanca, and Toulouse, which leave nothing to be desired, and will only cite that of Louvain, which says, "The learned and the ignorant can gather admirable fruits from this book, the faithful may read it without fear of danger to faith or morals. There is nothing contained in it that tends to relaxation of virtue, or to any indiscreet rigor. While reading it, we feel a special grace which is not experienced in reading others. The more we study it, the greater become our appreciation and pleasure." The ordinary of the place in which Mary of Agreda dwelt, says in his approbation, "I conclude by saying that this work is truly good, that, without the least doubt, it contains a heavenly doctrine, which we find to be solid, strong, true, and conformable to the gospel, which leads to the true knowledge of God and the most pure Virgin Mary, Mother of God, and excites to the love of virtue and the horror of sin." In his beautiful introduction, Father Laurent speaks of Mary of Agreda as follows: "At 35 years of age, in one of her ecstatic visions, she receives from heaven the order to write the history of the Mother of God. Through humility she declines the honor, thinking herself unworthy. She seeks to avoid that mission which she judges herself incapable of accomplishing, but the will of the Lord being clearly manifested, she obeys as a submissive daughter, and writes that admirable book, The Mystical City. Divine inspiration is impressed on every page. Reading it, we become convinced that it was only in the heavenly regions into which she was ravished, that she could have acquired the knowledge of the most sublime mysteries, the revelation of the most adorable and ineffable designs of the Most High on the august Mary. It is under the direction of Mary that she retraces the history of the mortal life of the Queen of Heaven, so that this work, written by a poor girl, destitute of human or acquired science, and living in the obscurity of the cloister, is, perhaps, the most extraordinary and astonishing which has ever come from the hand of a human creature. The author unhesitatingly touches on the highest mysteries of religion, and explains them with rare clearness. She develops without embarrassment, and with wonderful facility, Catholic dogma and the most difficult passages of the Scriptures. Sacred chronology is as familiar to her as to the most eminent doctors. She reveals the most hidden ways of providence, sacred theology, sublime philosophy, knowledge of natural sciences, persuasive eloquence, all are found there, even to neatness, correctness, sublimity, strength, and elegance of style. Introduction to the Life of the Venerable Mary of Agreda, pages 16, 17. We dwell purposely on the works of this servant of God. In our opinion, the mystical city is, not only, as Father Laurent says, the most extraordinary and astonishing book which has ever been written by a human creature, but it appears to us to be manifestly designed, in the views of divine providence, to produce great fruits for the sanctification and high perfection of souls in these latter times. But the servant of God, or rather God himself and the august Queen of Heaven, by her organ, will reveal the designs of God with regard to this book, and will manifest to us why it has been given to the world. It is in particular the priest, devoted to Mary, whom we ask to meditate on the following. The Most High, addressing the servant of God, said to her, "My daughter, when I sent my only son into the world, men, except the small number who served me, were in the most deplorable state they had ever been. And as in time of deepest misery I show my greatest mercy, so I will now grant to men a new favor, because the proper time has arrived. In order the more to confound them, this is the time when my mercy shall shine, and in which I desire that my love may not be idle, notwithstanding that this is the most unhappy age of the world since the incarnation of the Word. I desire to give to men a sovereign remedy, by which, if they wish to use it, they may receive my grace. Those who find it shall be happy, those who will know its value shall not be less so. I will that men should know the worth of the intercession of her who brought the remedy to their sins, when in her virginal womb she gave mortality to the immortal. I will discover to them many of the marvels which my power has operated on Mary in her quality of mother of my incarnate Son, marvels, which, by my secret judgment, have been hidden until now. I did not manifest them to the primitive church, because they contain mysteries so high and sublime, that the faithful would have paused to search and admire them, when it was necessary to establish the jaw of grace, and to publish the gospel. And although this would not have been incompatible, nevertheless, men, so blind and ignorant, might have been perplexed at a time when faith in the Incarnation was yet feeble, and the precepts of the new law as yet in their infancy. I present to them this mystical city of refuge, the Mother of Mercy. Describe and explain it as well as thy weakness will allow. I do not wish this to be considered as merely an opinion, or a simple vision, but as a constant and certain truth. In order to avoid unnecessary discussion, we will explain these last words. We know and acknowledge with all the doctors, that the Church never gives absolute authority to the particular revelations vouchsafed to some privileged souls. By her approbation she merely permits us to believe that, probably, they have been inspired by God. If, however, the faithful have sufficient motives to believe that they come from God, there is nothing to prevent them from admitting them, and giving in their adhesion. Those who have reason to doubt are not required to believe, on condition, however, that they neither blame nor condemn those who believe them according to the approbation of the Church, which is the supreme judge in these matters. One day, the feast of the Immaculate Conception, being in the choir for matins, I heard a voice which demanded of me renewed attention for heavenly things. I was then raised from that state to another more sublime, wherein I beheld the throne of the Divinity radiant with immense glory and majesty. From it proceeded a voice, which, it seemed to me, could be heard throughout the entire universe, saying, "Poor, abandoned, ignorant sinners, great and small, sick and weak, and all the children of Adam, of whatever state, condition, or sex you may be, prelates, princes, and subjects, all over the entire world, come and seek a remedy from my liberality and infinite providence, through the intercession of her who gave humanity to the Word. After having heard this voice from the throne, I saw 4 globes coming forth from the divine being, which diffused a brilliant light over the 4 quarters of the world. We believe that by these symbols were designated 4 religious bodies which are to appear in the age of Mary. It was revealed to me that in these latter ages, the same Lord wished to exalt and spread the glory of his most holy Mother, and manifest to the world hidden miracles and mysteries reserved by divine providence for the time of greatest necessity, so that we may all avail ourselves of the help, the protection, and the powerful intercession of our august Queen. Then saw, coming out of the abyss, a formidable dragon which had 7 heads, accompanied by many others. It travelled over all the earth, seeking and perverting persons, by whose means it might oppose the intentions of the Lord, and prevent the glory of Mary and the benefits which, by her means, were to be conferred on the world. This vision of the infernal dragons caused in me the greatest sorrow. I understood that the victory would be strongly contested, but as reason, justice, and power are on the side of our Queen, there is nothing to fear. Nevertheless, men, by their malice, may hinder the great designs of God. Mystical City, Volume 8, page 377. Brussels edition. The servant of God continues, let holy priests, who are devoted to the glory of the august Mary, deign to pay great attention to the following. On another occasion, I found myself in great affliction, as was but just, on account of my not knowing if I had written well this sacred history, the sublimity of which surpasses all comprehension, angelic as well as human. Whilst thinking thus, I was drawn into a higher state, in which I beheld the throne of the most holy Trinity, the 3 divine persons, and the Blessed Virgin at the right hand of her divine Son. All were vested with immense glory. There was profound silence in heaven. The angels and saints seemed attentive to what was transpiring at the throne of supreme majesty. I beheld the person of the Father, taking as if from the bosom of his infinite and immutable being, a book, beautiful and enriched beyond human imagination, but it was closed. Giving it to the incarnate Word, he said, "This book and its contents are mine, it is very agreeable to me." Our Lord received it with great complaisance, and the divine Word, and the Holy Ghost, having touched their breasts with it, confirmed the same words, and placed it in the hands of the most pure Mary, who received it with incomparable joy. Then this great Queen called me and said, "Do you wish to know what this book is? Be attentive and look." The kind Mother opened and presented it to me, that I might read. I did so, and found it was the history of her most holy life, written in the same order, and with the same chapters as mine, under the title of the Mystical City. During the past 6 years we have had the joy and consolation of perusing and reperusing this work, always with new increase of faith and edification to our soul. We know that some religious bodies make use of it for their spiritual reading. A Carmelite prioress, who had read it during 20 years, told us that, at the commencement of her religious life, she had not understood the doctrine contained in it, but it soon became as a heavenly manna, with which she could not be satiated. A superioress of the Ladies of the Sacred Heart has said that the book was really her treasure. She could not cease to read it, such abundant fruit had she drawn from it for the salvation of her soul. In fine, our readers will permit us to relate a fact which happened a short time ago. A sick man had received the last sacraments with a fervor that edified all present. After the ceremony, raising himself in the bed, he called the priest and presented to him this book, saying, "Keep this, it has edified me during life, I do not wish it to be lost. Give it to someone, that it may prove for him the same source of benediction." We know the clergyman, the place, and the time of this occurrence, and to us it seems a most perfect eulogy on a book. In order to remove all that might embarrass the reader, we will say, that the Historical Dictionary of Morari, speaking of this book, says, that it is filled with visions, fables and reveries, which the author gives as revelations. This appreciation has been based on the censure of Paris in 1696, a censure which is declared by Amort, the greatest adversary of Mary of Agreda, to be without foundation. From the edition of this dictionary printed in 1712, This falsehood has passed into many other books, among the number, that of Feller, in which we pointed it out to the editors. Everyone knows that dictionaries are often copied from preceding ones. J. Sayers in his mysticism does not value this work as it deserves, but as he was no theologian, his authority is of little account. We give below a succinct summary of the acts for the cause of the beatification and canonization, in favor of Mary of Jesus of Agreda. The reader can see that God has been pleased to manifest the glory and sanctity of his servant, declared by the Church Venerable, and who will be, we hope, placed on our altars before many years. She died on the 24th of May, 1665, on the day of Pentecost. Shortly afterwards, the process of the ordinary was drawn up on the virtues and miracles in general of the Forma Sanctitatis. The petition for her canonization was offered, November 21, 1671. Clement X introduced the cause on the 24th of August, 1672. The commission of introduction was signed January 28, 1673. The decree of non-cult was carried on June 27, 1674. The apostolic process on the sanctity, the virtues and miracles in general, was begun on September 2, 1679. The process was opened, the servant of God declared venerable, and, in fine, on the 16th of December, 1689, a committee of consultors was named by Innocent XI for the examination of the works. In fine, Clement XIV declared that the book, The Mystical City, really was written by Mary of Agreda. At this time steps are being taken to reopen the cause, and we trust that in the age of Mary the servant of God will receive the supreme honors of beatification and canonization, which will fill up the measure of her glory in this world.